दोन्ही पण वेगळे एकदम परफेक्ट झालं ना आता म्हणजे गॅप वगैरे काहीच नाही. लिंक पाठवली का?
Good evening, everybody. We will start in a minute's time. Sir is trying to get some slides on some matter for us. This is going to be an experiment, so you will have to bear with us for a day, and then we will sort out how to display it on the screen.
If you have any remarks, questions, please go ahead when the technical problem is being solved. Yes, please go ahead.
You mentioned yesterday some perspectives of variance being used in Buddhism. Maybe this is, I'm taking it one step further. So my question is, do you see the detailed type of analysis that grammarians use being used in Buddhist apologetics?
It's a very, very important question. Actually, the background of the question is much wider. We speak of Buddhist school of philosophy, Brahmanical school of philosophy, but most of the Buddhists who wrote on any similar issues, who had something overlapping to say, they were all Brahmins. That also you should keep in mind. There is hardly Dharmakirti, Dingnag, Dharmapala, all these were Brahmins. And at one point, they thought that the Buddhist view was preferable to them, and they changed. So our making this division is artificial to some extent. Suppose someone that was there. The other thing is the Indian pedagogy of the period was that almost everyone learned grammar. Grammar was the first shastra that was taught. And that is why, even if they were not birth Brahmin, they would know grammar and they would know Sanskrit, all these things before they became writers, authors in their own right. So it's not surprising that the effect of formal grammar is seen in the writings of Dharmakirti and others. And we should not also suppose that these people were so much against each other that they rarely met. Probably they met at every city's corner and discussed it. That's what happens in India. That is, even if you take two schools which are very much different, which have very little to share with each other in philosophy. For example, if you take Muslims and Hindus, that is, the discussions in villages, cities are so common. Now politics has created more tension between the two than it ever actually existed. That is, it was very common. In my childhood, in my village, a person was telling a story for 24 days. He was a Muslim. He was sitting in the, just outside on the steps of the temple, and people loved his storytelling so much that they, after the work in the fields was over, after the bazaar had winded up, they would, come and sit next to him and listen. And so the kind of things that we have now learned to distinguish, see as two cleavages, two separate things, that in most instances did not exist. So one did not have to make a big effort to be influenced by someone else. That was very commonly done. So with this in mind, you should look at the question you have in mind. Now, if with exposure to grammar in the school, with exposure to Sanskrit in daily life in different areas, with people mingling with each other much more than we think they mingle, the idea that we deliberately, consciously take something from the Buddhists or from the Brahmins almost never occurred to people. That is, it was commonly taken, just like Sufism in some cases in modern India. That is, it's a special gift to Islam given by India. And so that, the Sufis themselves would not know which one they took from outside and which one really belonged to them. So I'm skirting your question in a way. Now, is that enough for your answer, or you want some specific case? Okay. Things were very different, and many of us would wish that they would return to those different days, and not everything will be turned into politics. Yes, please.
Yeah, I was reading another book on Archaeopathy. I can't remember the author's name exactly. But there, those three sections of Archaeopathy were referred to as Pashyanti, Madhyama, and Vaikhari. Now, this terminology seems completely different from what you have been.
No. The two issues are very different. There is physical divisions of a book is what I was talking about so far. At the right time, we will come to Pashyanti, Madhyama, Vaikhari. Okay? So there is no, there is, some have claimed that the first book is for Pashyanti, the second is for Madhyama, the third is for Vaikhari. That sort of claim has been made, but it's just a speculation, nothing more than that. The author is logically developing his views, logically giving us some enlightenment, and to connect it with a particular stage of language it is not really warranted by what we have. But people like to read something, in abstract things, so that's what it is. Okay.
When you tell me, I will scroll it down.
Can you? Is it being projected?
Yes.
Oh, good. No,
So you could read
half
from
of the
here.
battle won.
So you could read from here.
Oh yes.
And as and when you want, I'll just keep scrolling it.
Okay. If I scroll it, will it be?
No,
It will not.
the input is from here.
Okay. I'll.
Do you want
I'll
this laptop to be there?
that's another way.
That's a good question.
Yeah, there will be few interruptions if you do it that way.
डिस्कनेक्ट किया
ब्राह्मण श्रवण इसी के लिए आया क्या? Sorry, is it Brahmana Shravana?
No, no,
is
not because
already-
of this, but it's
Because all of them are real one, important one are all Brahmins and then become Shramana.
yes, but if you want to, Shramanas were not necessarily confined to Brahmins. That's also not, there were probably more Shramanas who were non-Brahmins than Brahmins. But what I'm saying is, among the Shramanas who mattered as thinkers, as bringing new ideas into the sampradaya and other things, it's mostly Brahmins who are doing that. Because Brahmins were very fond of disagreeing with each other for conducting debates. So that's the way it is. There was something else I wanted to say. Arranged? Yes. Now, what's happening here is that technology is taking its revenge on me. that is what that's what we have. When I began, I didn't give you this personal bit. First of all, when I went to Harvard to do my PhD, the idea was not that I would work on the Bharitri-hari, but I was sort of used to the Indian system when the teacher told you that work on this subject or that subject. And I was, first of all, I probably would have worked on dialects of Indo-European languages. And so for first 2 years, I did hardly any Sanskrit. And I just did some Hittite, some Greek, Old Persian, those are the things, whatever was available, I would read. The idea was reading them linguistically, not that I became proficient in any of those, but to be able to see their connections with Sanskrit. Then it occurred to me that I would really not be ready in next 2 years to make some original contribution that I expected of myself, and PhD committee also expects it. At the time, because I had decided I wanted to finish my PhD in 4 years, and I was not going to come back to India unless I did my PhD. So that was the frame of mind in which I was working. And to do any original work in Indo-European languages, I needed to work on the dialects of Greek and dialects of Latin. And I had done nothing of Latin, and there was hardly any time to dig up the material on dialects of Greek. So I had put courage to say to my teacher, Professor Ingalls, that it would be very difficult for me to do something that would satisfy me, and probably that would satisfy you, if I continued with just historical linguistics. So I find, in fact, whatever is happening at MIT or other places where Chomskyan linguistics and other things are taking place, that's much more exciting to me than doing some more work on a catalog of this dialect or that dialect, that kind of thing. So he said, well, I never expected you to follow my wishes. Do whatever you like, which was a very different way. So I said, fine. And so 2.5 years into my PhD program, I changed. And I went to the library in a different way now. And the Widener Library at Harvard is a great place in the world. A lot of very rare books you find there. I used to spend practically, I know, 2/3 of my day there. And so I began to look for works on Bharitri-hari. You know. And there was nothing, practically nothing. After 1950, no one had paid attention to the Sanskrit section of the library. Before that, there was a specialist librarian working. So Professor Engels then said to me, order anything you like. You know, I'll make sure that the copies arrive. Those were the days when we did not have internet. We did not have a way of asking anyone who was not within your earshot. And so you had to write long letters and wait for months to get any piece of information. But somehow, by good luck, I happened to meet knowledgeable persons somewhere. You know, for example, once just on the airport, I met Professor Lokesh Chandra, and the man who was working on Vakyapadya manuscripts, Wilhelm Rau, was I did not know which German university Professor Rau worked at. So I was for a month or two, I could not find anything about him. And then Professor Lokesh Chandra said, yeah, I know where Professor Rao works. He works at Marburg. So I wrote a letter